Welcome to Season 2, Episode 15 of the podcast, Ghosts, Demons, and Murder, Oh My. My name is Hayden Crook, and I'll be your host for today's episode on the Satanic Panic. It's going to be a longer one, so buckle in, dim the lights, drink a cup of chai tea, whatever. I'm excited for this one. I put a lot of research, a lot of effort, and a lot of time into this one. I'm excited for this one. So, yeah, 22 pages of research notes and stuff. So get ready to dive in. And my voice is probably going to get dry, so I'm going to take a lot of water breaks during this. Just a disclaimer. So let's see. Let's begin. Source one, Wikipedia. Michelle Remembers chronicles Pasder's therapy during the late 1970s with his longtime patient Smith. In 1973, Pasder first started treating Smith at his private psychiatric practice in Victoria, British Columbia. In 1976, when Pasder was treating Smith for depression related to her having had a miscarriage, Smith confided she felt that she had something important to tell him, but could not remember what it was. Soon thereafter, Pasder and Smith had a session where Smith purportedly screamed for 25 minutes nonstop and eventually started speaking in the voice of a 5-year-old. According to Pasder, during the next 14 months, he spent more than 600 hours using hypnosis to help Smith recover. Seeming memories of satanic ritual abuse that occurred when she was 5 years old in 1954 and 1955 at the hands of her mother, Virginia Proby, and others, all of whom Smith said were members of a satanic cult in Victoria. Source 2, Goodreads. Evil is a living spiritual being, perverted and perverting. One of the greatest needs is defense from the evil, which is called the devil. Pope Paul VI. Michelle Smith was 5 years old when her mother offered her up to a cult of devil worshippers to be used demonically to raise Satan himself. 22 years later, on a psychiatrist's couch, she relived the long buried horrors inflicted upon her as her childhood agonies came screaming forth in terrifying detail. With the help of her bishop, Michelle brought her hideous story to the Vatican. Satanic witches chanting to summon the devil, wounds appearing on her skin, human and animal sacrifices. Now, the full story, with vivid photographs, records Michelle's victory, a child's survival in the face of sheer madness. And that's a summary of the book. Michelle Remembers. Later on, we're going to talk about a documentary that was made, but for now, we're going to focus on the book, which occurred during the Satanic Panic. So, I picked out some reviews I liked on Goodreads from people. This one is from Hester, July 3rd, 2023. Michelle Remembers gets the 1 star for the writing. It's just god awful. But in reality, he gets 5 Baphomet pentagrams for originality and 5 more Baphomet pentagrams for hilarity. I will give Michelle Smith and her cohort in fuckery, Dr. Lawrence Pasder, the recognition they deserve for the sheer comedic brilliance they can conjure up in this over-the-top real-life story of horrific child abuse Michelle supposedly suffered at the hands of Satanists and even Satan himself. Here are some of the hysterical claims or testimony, as Dr. Pasder likes to call them. 1. The Satanists had a seemingly endless supply of dead babies and whitekins to use in their rituals. In one traumatic ceremony, the Satanists each had a white kitten which they tore apart with their teeth. Michelle was given away by her mother in an elaborate death rebirth ceremony taking place in a cemetery. Her mother threw her into an open grave, and an evil satanic nurse pulled her out and reenacted Michelle's rebirth, complete with blood, simulated childbirth, and being licked like a cat. Her tormentors would put bugs in her food, which resulted in Michelle's refusal to eat. She was also locked up in a hollow Satan statue and was told she had to eat pieces of the dead baby they smeared on her. Now, this abuse went on for a year. I think she would have died if she didn't eat anything for a whole year. An evil church pew mysteriously appears in a Catholic church. Michelle, Dr. Pasder, and a priest have to burn it. Dr. Pasder and Michelle have no boundaries in their doctor-patient relationship. They take a picnic. The doctor takes the non-Catholic Michelle to church with him during her therapy sessions. The doctor would call her love and tell her she had a beautiful mind. No wonder they ended up married. An evil doctor cuts up a bunch of dead bodies. The dead bodies leave a blood-slick mess. He then sewed horns and a tail onto Michelle. More dead babies. A possessed woman from Vancouver has the ability to spin her head around, all the way around, just like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. Then later, a whole room of Satanists spin their heads around, like in some kind of choreographed dance number from hell. Satan is a poet and we don't even know it. Satan speaks in rhyme. I bet he was wearing a jaunty little beret and had a goatee and snapped his fingers a lot. Here's an example of the rhymes he was laying down. 28 is the number that opens up the gate. Satan wraps his tail around Michelle's neck and she suffers body memory rashes. More dead babies. A prepubescent girl is brought out onto a cross and Satan cuts out her heart and then cleaves her body in half. The archangel Michael, JC himself, and his mother Mary helped Michelle survive this several days long satanic ceremony. What I want to know is, was this ceremony more like a conference? Like when the day's speeches, sacrifices, and activities were done, did they all go home, then reconvene the next day? Or was it held like a marathon session? I can just imagine Michelle and Dr. Pazder making sweet love on top of a pile of money they earned from this hot mess of a book. Sean Patrick Berg, July 30th, 2013. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Well, Michelle did. After this book was published, the 1980s, 1990s, Satanist hysteria caught on. The West Memphis Three, including former death row inmate, now freed author Damien Eccles, have this idiot to thank for their public lynching. Basically, this book is a novelization of therapy transcripts where Michelle goes back into her childhood, where she claims to have been abused by Satanists, including her mother. It grows in ridiculousness to the point where Satan himself comes into the picture spewing Dr. Seuss-esque rhymes like, so feed the fire, children of hell, feed the fire so you can tell, feed a fire that'll spread for years, feed a fire, feed, feed, feed a fire. It's only around page 200 that the quack who co-wrote the book with Smith decides to actually have her brain scanned, as well as they could in the 70s. Nothing comes up. There's also no physical evidence that she had her teeth mingled with as she claims. And she seems to have regrown a severed toe after her abuse. Huh. I would be inclined to forgive Smith some of her lies if they were well written, but you get the feeling while reading this book that she has a limited imagination, resulting in frightening descriptions like there's people with arms that are bleeding, there's people with no noses, and they're bleeding from their eyes. There's people that's got no noses. I read this as research for a novel I'm writing that takes place in the 1970s that deals with the supernatural. I would have been better off sitting in the woods reading Dr. Seuss's What Was I Scared Of by flashlight. Source 3, cbc.com. There was a time when Satan was everywhere, or he seemed to be at least. During the 80s and 90s, the devil was always making headlines. Was the era of the Satanic Panic, a moment in history when heavy metal and tabletop gaming weren't just the stuff of nerdcore, but a serious moral threat. That's the poppier side of the panic, though, the sort of thing you'll see referenced on Stranger Things. At the time, the hysteria went deeper than parental pearl clutching over Judas Priest in Dungeons and Dragons. It gave very real credence to false reports of fantastical horror, rumors that destroyed lives and led to countless wrongful convictions. Among the more infamous examples, there's the Martinsville Nightmare, the story of a daycare in small town Saska- Saskatchewan that was accused of harboring a murderous cult, as recounted on the CBC podcast Uncovered. 9 people there would ultimately face charges by a complete lack of evidence. Similar cases cropped up worldwide as law enforcement was trained to identify signs of satanic ritual abuse, which leads me into the documentary that is based off the Michelle Remembers book that I just discussed with that doctor and his patient and all their claims. Written and directed by Vancouver-based filmmakers Sean Horler and Stephen J. Adams, Satan Wants You reveals the untold history of the book that sparked the panic. Michelle Remembers, published in 1980, Michelle Remembers was written by Dr. Larry Pazder, a Victoria psychiatrist, and his patient Michelle Smith, a local housewife who'd sought treatment after a miscarriage. Under Pazder's care, Smith underwent recovered memory therapy, a practice that's since been discredited, and the book recounts their extensive sessions together. The result was a best-selling work of horror, a memoir with a paperback tagline that promised the same checkout line thrills as a VC Andrews joint. The shocking true story of the ultimate evil, a child's possession by the devil. My child was Smith, and her nightmare began at the age of 5. It was then Smith claims that her mother gave her away to a satanic cult. For 14 months, she would be held captive and tortured, witnessing ritual murders and mutilations, many involving babies. The public gobbled it up like so many cannibalized corpses, and as book sales took off, its author became regular fixtures on TV, appearing on everything from Oprah to CBC's Midday. Clips from their interviews appear throughout the doc. Perhaps more incredible still, Pastor and Smith were quickly established as authorities in satanic ritual abuse. Psychiatrists and members of law enforcement would turn to them as experts on this brand new subject. Saint Once You revisits that history while including voices that were conspicuously absent during the duo's time on the talk show circuit. Members of Smith and Pastor's families appear on record for the first time. The doctor and patient would later marry. And in unpacking the origins of the Satanic Panic, the film touches on present day conspiracy theories from Pizzagate to QAnon. Okay, so I kind of did a brief little intro into the Satanic Panic. That those filmmakers believe that this basically set off like a chain reaction that led to the emergence of the Satanic Panic. So I thought that was interesting. I still need to watch the documentary. So, with that being said, we're going to talk about the legacy of the Satanic Panic and this domino effect and things that happened throughout the years, even more recently, and how just mass hysteria and all this stuff can kind of make people act crazy. Source one, Wikipedia. The Hampstead hoax was a series of false allegations starting in 2014 that a Satan worshipping pedophile ring of about 175 parents, teachers, and religious leaders had been abusing children in the Hampstead area of North London. Police found no evidence of pedophilia or abuse, let alone of murderous Satanism. But the alleged abusers were subjected to harassment, death threats, and online abuse that continued until at least 2022. It later emerged that the two children who had made the allegations had been threatened and abused by adults into making them the hoax. In the summer of 2014, two children made accusations that their father, Ricky Dearman, former husband of Russian-born Hampstead resident Ella Draper, was running the ring. Draper reported that her two children had been abused by their father. The police interviewed the children, making an audio recording according to standard procedure. The children said that their father was a member of a ring of satanic pedophiles who killed babies and drank their blood. They said that cult members would drink the baby's blood, then dance around wearing baby skulls and shoes made of baby skin. The children said that in addition to their father, their elder half-brother, several teachers from their school, the priest at the adjacent church, many parents from their school, social workers, children and family court advisory and support service employees, and named police officers all belonged to the satanic cult. Response. A police search of the local school, Christ Church Primary, and church for the secret rooms where the children and babies were killed found that the rooms did not exist. None of the other children, whom the two children had named as abuse victims, made similar accusations. Some of the sites given by the children as locations of abuse did not exist, and none of the Metropolitan Police officers whom the children had named as members of the cult were found to exist. The children recanted and told police that they had been forced to make the allegations by their mother and her partner, Abraham Christie, in a process that a judge would later refer to as torture. According to Judge Justice Hoffley, there's every reason to conclude that over the course of the 4 weeks spent abroad last summer, the children's minds were filled with ever more elaborate, fantastical, and sexually explicit stories. It was part of the deliberate plan by Mr. Christie and Miss Draper. Police were unable to prosecute Christie and Draper because the psychological abuse had happened in another country, Morocco, where they were on holiday. Draper continued to sue her ex-husband for custody of the children and recruited Sabine McNeil to help her. In a podcast about the hoax, Alex Mostros describes McNeil as a 76-year-old German former scientist who moved to Britain and, having convinced herself that the family courts were not acting in the best interests of parents, became a McKinsey friend advising people without lawyers representing themselves in court. In early 2015, McNeil took videos of police interviews of the children describing the satanic ritual abuse, a list of the alleged abusers' names, and other confidential information from Draper's case, and posted it all on the internet, specifically on Henry Curtis's The Tap blog. The videos went viral. The conspiracy theory spread that there was a satanic pedophile ring in Hampstead, causing Dearman and the other 175 people to be subjected to harassment, death threats, and online abuse that continued until at least 2022. After a court ordered that both Draper and McNeil remove material about the case from the internet, Draper evaded police and fled to Spain, while McNeil fled to Germany but was arrested on her return to London. In 2016, McNeil was issued with a lifetime restraining order against broadcasting illegal and false claims. 3 months later, she pleaded guilty to violating the restraining order and received a suspended sentence. In November and December 2018, she was convicted of 4 counts of harassment and stalking and 6 counts of again violating the 2016 restraining order. 2019, she was sentenced to 9 years in prison. In sentencing, Judge Sally Cahill pronounced, the direct consequences of your actions is that for the 4 families concerned, you have ruined all normal family life. Their children have been unable to attend school normally and are either homeschooled or have to carry tracking devices and alarms. The families have escape routes planned in case of attack, and mothers have slept on the floors of their children's bedrooms to protect them. They have had to move homes. They have had business ruined as a result of being unable to have an online profile. As if that is not bad enough, for the children, they will never, as things stand at the moment, be able to go online and put in their own names without seeing the vile filth that you have peddled over a period of years. The allegations were of murder, cannibalism, Satanism, and sexual abuse. They could not be more serious or vile. The children's lives have been blighted forever. In my judgment, you are an arrogant, malicious, evil, and manipulative woman. Since 2015, at least 7 other people have been arrested and charged variously with stalking, intimidation, harassment, and contempt of court in connection with the hoax. Source 2, The Sunday Times. A woman described as an online troll of the worst kind has been jailed for falsely accusing primary school parents of satanic abuse and cannibalism. Sabine McNeil, 74, led a campaign to uncover baseless devil worship and child abuse at a primary school in Hampstead, northwest London. She arrested 4 mothers who cannot be named, claiming they were members of a cult who cooked and ate babies. She also made allegations of murder. Southwark Crown Court heard it forced the parents to take their children out of school and use fake names, tracking devices, and panic alarms. The jury was told that one parent was approached online by a pedophile looking to abuse her child. Police put the families under special measures, which included planning escape routes, changing the route to school, and practicing panic drills. Judge Sally Cahill, QC, said it was one of the most serious cases of stalking and breach of restraining order that there could be, telling McNeil that for the 4 families concerned, you ruined all normal family life. They have had to move home. They have had business ruined as a result of being unmade to have an online profile. The children will never, as things stand at the moment, be able to go online and put into their own names. Without seeing the vile filth that you have peddled over a period of years. The children's lives have been blighted forever. In my judgment, you are an arrogant, malicious, evil, and manipulative woman, the judge said. Miranda Moore for the prosecution said McNeil reportedly harassed her victims from 2014 until late last year. McNeil published scandalous satanic child abuse accusations and encouraged people to take direct action against the children of these women. McNeil of Camden, London, claimed that up to 18 teachers from their primary school were also involved in abusing children. She said members of the cult carried out satanic rituals at a Hampstead church. 2014, police received reports of widespread child abuse, satanic child rape, and murder in Hampstead, and initially took the complaint seriously. The matter reached the High Court, and Mrs. Justice Poffley ruled that the accusations were baseless. Recordings of children's police interviews surfaced online, and McNeil began a campaign to uncover the alleged cult. She was involved in a protest at the church in March 2015 and was subsequently arrested. McNeil was cleared of plotting to intimidate Vicar and his parishioners after a trial at Blackfriars Crown Court, was given a restraining order to stop her harassing the parents involved. She then attended the General Synod, which was discussing the Church of England's approach to child abuse, and handed out leaflets about the false allegations and was arrested. One victim said, "To this day, my daughter is fearful and worries that our family will be attacked in our home. My husband keeps a crowbar under our bed. We may have to consider changing our daughter's name by deed poll." McNeil was convicted of 4 charges of harassment and six charges of breaching a restraining order. She was cleared of 11 further charges of breaching a restraining order. She was sentenced to 9 years in total. So that was kind of like the same stuff that I had just read, but it had a little bit more detail about what that McNeil lady actually did, and she's crazy. Okay, source three is Missouri Legislative Library. This is a different story. Like I said, I'm going into the legacy of the Satanic Panic and what it led to. So this is called the McMartin Nightmare, but I'm going to take a quick water break. Hold on. This is just sad, like, oh, people can ruin people's lives just with fake allegations and just stuff. It's crazy. In late 1983, McMartin family, owners of a California preschool, were accused by a parent of molesting children under their care. In 1984, seven McMartin family members and staff were charged with 115 counts of child abuse, later expanded to 321 counts of child abuse involving 48 children. During the trial, accusations were made that the alleged abuses were satanic in nature. Claims that the abusers had dressed as ministers or Santa Claus to help cover up their abuse were mingled with even more outlandish stories involving hidden tunnels under the preschool, and claims that one of the abusers possessed the power of flight. In the aftermath of the charges and the publicity that surrounded them, more than 100 other preschools faced similar accusations. The organization, Believe the Children, was formed to promote the theory of ritual satanic abuse happening across the nation, particularly in preschools and similar facilities. Satan Goes Primetime. In 1988, NBC aired the primetime special Devil Worship Exposing Satan's Underground, hosted by Geraldo Rivera, Pete Rowland, a Carl Junction MO teenager charged alongside two others. Oh, sorry. In 1988, NBC aired the primetime special Devil Worship Exposing Satan's Underground, hosted by Geraldo Rivera. Sorry, Geraldo Rivera. Pete Rowland, a Carl Junction teenager charged alongside two others in the 1987 murder of a classmate, was interviewed due to the allegedly satanic nature of his crime. Over the course of the film, Rivera alleged that thousands of children were being sacrificed by satanic cults in the US every year, and their metal music and marijuana were in part responsible for leading many teenagers to satanic worship and horrific crimes. Exposing Satan's Underground became the highest rated television documentary aired up to that point. In the years that followed, hundreds of documentaries like it aired on every major network. In 1989, Oprah Winfrey featured Michelle Smith and Laurel Rose Wilson, another author of a satanic ritual abuse survival memoir, on her program, uncritically warning her millions of viewers about the dangers that satanic cults pose to their children. Nothing criminal here. Police departments across the state became involved in the hunt for Satanists. In the first St. Louis Post-Dispatch article, 10 police jurisdictions, including Crestwood, Eureka, and Festus, informed the paper that they were investigating activities they believed were occult-related. St. Louis police departments alleged that they discovered 30 locations where they believe satanic activity had occurred. Even the head of the Missouri Highway Patrol Missing Persons Unit was interviewed regarding cases that could potentially be satanic. In the midst of this seeming ungodly onslaught, law enforcement officers, therapists, and educators all began attending seminars by national experts on satanic related crime. Overnight, an industry was born. Nothing is more simple than the devil made them do it. In 1992, FBI agent Kenneth Lanning released an exhaustive report on the presence of satanic ritual abuse in the United States. His conclusion? There wasn't any to begin with. Hundreds of communities all over America are run by mayors, police departments, and community leaders who are practicing Satanists and who regularly murder and eat people. Not likely. He found that there was no evidence of any occult sacrifice ever happening in the US, despite the extremely widespread belief in such activities. The appeal of that satanic conspiracy, he explained, was easy to understand. First, it is a simple explanation for a complex problem. If we do not understand something, we make it the work of some supernatural force. Then as now, the vast majority of child sexual abuse was perpetrated by people within the child's life, usually family members. Agent Lanning theorized that the reality of this was simply too difficult to accept for many, so outlandish conspiracies are drawn up instead. If your child's molestation was perpetrated by a sophisticated satanic cult, there's nothing you could have done to prevent it, and therefore no reason to feel any guilt. His report concluded that the vast majority of child testimonies regarding satanic ritual abuse stemmed from some combination of urban legends, child imagination, and overzealous interveners who would punish children toward desired answers during questioning. Okay. Source 4 is Axios.com. This is another source, another instance. It is about Utah. Fun stuff. In 1985, the Provo Daily Herald was in the midst of a 12-part expose titled Satan Worship in Zion. Context. It was a satanic panic, a 1980s hysteria that swept the nation with reports of satanic cults abusing children in rituals and recruiting teens. Law enforcement and psychologists piled on with criminal charges, and claims that victims recovered memories revealed childhood abuse at the hands of occultists. Media reports of widespread devil worship were common at the time. Details. The Herald special report cites anonymous interviews with a teenager who claims he drank the blood of sacrificed animals after meeting a Satanist in seventh grade and witnessed a red glow that possessed a girl to stab her brother with drumsticks. A director of a youth group home who says 60% of Utahns in a criminal justice system have had some involvement with Satanism and that teens in his care have witnessed supernatural powers such as levitation. A 22-year-old Provo man who has monster posters and describes his interest in Satanism as escapist fantasy, and yet is deemed newsworthy apparently because he owns tarot cards. Meanwhile, two Utah County Sheriff's deputies and covens of witches said covens of witches were operating in abandoned buildings. One deputy launched a new intelligence unit that is building a file on occult activities. The other side. One article quotes a local counselor who warns against the hysteria. Yes, but the Daily Herald perceived the two camps seem to exist. Those who believe evil is best fought by an informed enemy, in which case there is no such thing as too much information, and those who ride on the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil bandwagon, and believe the less said, the better per story. Why it matters. Echoes of the Satanic Panic can be heard in the claims of rampant human trafficking made by contemporary conservative and religious groups. The 2022 primary contest for Utah County attorney drew on fears of ritual abuse and human trafficking, and ultimately unseated David Levitt, a moderate who favored sentencing reform. Amid rumors that Levitt and his wife were involved with cannibalism and sex crimes, Levitt said in a press conference he was falsely accused in a report from the 80s and denied the allegation. Worth your time? Rick Emerson's 2022 book, Unmask Alice, revisits Utah's satanic panic in the context of Beatrice Sparks, the local propagandist who wrote the best-selling fake diary, Go Ask Alice. All right, source 5, Texas Public Radio. This is another account. With a few strokes of a pen, Judge Christine Del Prado dismissed the case against 74-year-old Melvin Quinney, giving him his good name back. Mr. Quinney, I have signed the dismissal, said Del Prado, and I thank you, sir, for your attendance. You're now discharged from this court. Applause broke out from onlookers in the same court that 32 years ago had convicted Quinney of indecency with a child and sentenced him to 20 years. This was the final courtroom step in Quinney's exoneration. Painful journey that saw him spend 8 years in Texas prisons, forced him to register as a sex offender, and saw his 4 children pushed into the foster care system. Now, that same court and his family say that abuse never took place. It was all based on a lie stemming from a moral satanic panic that swept the county, said Innocence Project of Texas Director Mike Ware. This is a good day for justice, said Ware, standing next to Quinney in front of the Bexar County Courthouse. In the 1980s and 90s, a mass hysteria swept across Texas and the nation around the satanic ritual abuse of children. According to a 1992 FBI report, hundreds of victims alleged thousands of offenders had killed tens of thousands of people as part of what is now called the Satanic Panic. Even in 1992, when the report was generated, they called the allegations bizarre and unfounded. Sorry, water break. But allegations persisted, with several people being falsely imprisoned. Notable exonerees included the so-called San Antonio Four and the Kellers. Like other exonerees, Queenie should be entitled to compensation from the state. It isn't immediately clear what the final number will be, but it will stretch into the hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. Queenie is just the latest example of how Texas is still grappling with the aftermath of the false panic. Queenie's now deceased ex-wife Deborah, along with therapists, pressured his 9-year-old son John Parker Quinney to testify that his father molested him, that he was in a satanic cult, and that he had seen children murdered. In court documents, Parker said initially his sister Sarah was the focus of the mother's molestation claim, but it shifted to him. He resisted testifying at first, saying he had no memory of the abuse. But therapists specializing in the now debunked satanic ritual abuse theories used what current law enforcement officials called outdated and inappropriate interview techniques. Children are being coerced by ill-guided professionals to make these outrageous, demonstrably false accusations that have now been proven false beyond all doubt, said Ware. Parker began to believe he was part of a satanic cult that his father was in and that he had been abused. Whenever I had any doubts that something happened, I was told by the therapist this was because I had multiple personalities, that my dad had programmed me this way, Parker said the court record of his recantation. Melvin Quinney served 8 years of his 20-year sentence before being paroled and forced to register as a sex offender. Parker realized after his mother passed away in 1999 that something had gone terribly wrong. He recanted his testimony as an adult and worked to clear his father's name. Despite spending years fighting to clear his father's name, along with his three siblings, Parker physically cringed, his eyes wet with tears, when an attorney with the Bexar County District Attorney's Office called him a hero at Monday's press conference. Sorry. I'm still holding on to a lot of guilt over what happened, and a little bit of shame that I didn't realize sooner what had happened to us, he said. As a child, Parker had been called a little hero for testifying against his father. He says he battles with guilt today, but has forgiven his now deceased mother. He said she was clearly mentally ill. Instead of getting help with the real mental problems she was experiencing, she was persuaded and kept mentally ill with pseudoscience and superstition, said Parker. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals found Quinney innocent in February and remanded the case back to the 227th District Court in Bexar County, where he was first convicted in 1991. Bexar County District Attorney Joe Gonzalez, standing in front of the county courthouse Monday, credited the exoneration to the Innocence Project of Texas, along with his conviction integrity unit. He said his lawyers swear an oath to do the right thing, something they got to do by recommending dismissal. That certainty is the case today, because today we had the opportunity to right or wrong, Gonzalez said. There was a typo. Melvin Quinney said yes, he was wrongfully accused and convicted, but the impact on his family goes well beyond him. His ex-wife was unable to care for the children not long after he was imprisoned, and they were pushed into the state's foster care system. For years, the children thought they would be targeted by satanic cult members. I was a victim, so what? My children, they were the real victims, Queenie said. My 4 children were the real victims of this whole fiasco we went through. After 30 years, he says he hopes today's ruling helps the family continue to heal. Water break. If you remember at the beginning, I mentioned Dungeons and Dragons a little bit, reading an article. So that's the last part, the last portion. We're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and how that was part of the Satanic Panic. BBC News, source 6. But in the 1980s, the game came under an extraordinary, sustained assault from fundamentalist religious groups who feared its power over young minds. 1976, 16-year-old child prodigy James Dallas Egbert III disappeared from his room at Michigan State University. Private investigator William Deere was hired by James' parents to find their son. Despite apparently knowing little about role-playing games, Deere believed that D&D was the case of Egbert's disappearance. In truth, Egbert suffered from, among other things, depression and drug addiction and had gone into hiding in the utility tunnels under the university during an episode of self-harm. The well-publicized episode, referred to as the steam tunnel incident, prompted a number of works of fiction, including the novel Mazes and Monsters and 1982 Tom Hanks film of the same name. Egbert later died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 1980. Despite the evidence regarding his mental health problems, some activists believe Egbert's suicide was caused by D&D. 1982 high school student Irving Lee Pulling died after shooting himself in the chest, despite an article in the Washington Post at the time commenting how Pulling had trouble fitting in. Mother Patricia Pulling believed her son's suicide was caused by him playing D&D. Again, it was clear the more complex psychological factors were at play. Victoria Rock Charlie, a classmate of Irvin Pulling, commented that he had a lot of problems anyway that weren't associated with the game. At first, Patricia Pulling attempted to sue her son's high school principal, claiming the curse placed upon her son's character during a game run by the principal was real. She also sued TSR Incorporated, the publishers of D&D. Despite the court dismissing these cases, Pulling continued her campaign by forming Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons, BAD, in 1983. Pulling described D&D as a fantasy role-playing game which uses demonology, witchcraft, voodoo, murder, rape, blasphemy, suicide, assassination, insanity, sex perversion, homosexuality, prostitution, satanic type rituals, gambling, barbarism, cannibalism, sadism, desecration, demon summoning, necromantics, divination, and other teachings. Pulling and Bad launched an intensive media campaign through conservative Christian outlets as well as mainstream media, including an appearance on current affairs show 60 Minutes opposite D&D co-creator Gary Gygax. In 1985, John Quigley of the Lakeview Full Gospel Fellowship spoke for many opponents when he claimed the game is an occult tool that opens up young people to influence or possession by demons. These fears also found their way into the UK. Fantasy author K.T. Davies recalls showing a vicar a gaming figure. He likened D&D to demon worship because there were gods in the game. Veteran role player Andy Smith found himself in the unusual position of being both a role player and a Christian. While working for a Christian organization, I was told to remove my role-playing books from the shared accommodation as they were offensive to some of the other workers and contained references to demon worship. Looking back now, it's possible to see the tendrils of a classic moral panic, and some elements of the slightly esoteric world of role-playing did stir the imaginations of panicked outsiders. Since fantasy typically features activities like magic and witchcraft, D&D was perceived to be in direct opposition to biblical precepts and established thinking about witchcraft and magic, says Dr. David Waldron, lecturer in history and anthropology at Federation University, Australia, and author of role-playing games and the Christian Right, community formation in a response to a moral panic. There was also a view that youth had an inability to distinguish between fantasy and reality. When the wider claims about the nature of D&D tended to emanate from evangelical groups, they promoted wider suspicion. The memes from this campaign proliferated, and being published largely uncritically in the initial stages led to a wide-ranging list of bizarre claims, says Waldron. For example, that when a character died, you were also likely to commit suicide. The claims made about role-playing games did not go unchallenged. Author Michael Stackpole was a vocal dissenter criticizing Patricia Pulling in Bad. In 1990, Stackpole published the Pulling Report, in which he documented numerous errors made by Bad and accused Pulling of misrepresenting her credentials as an expert witness on games. Studies by the American Association of Suicidology, the U.S. Center for Disease Control, and Health and Welfare Canada, all found no causal link between D&D and suicide. D&D continues to be debated. In the U.S., at least, in 2010, the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit upheld a ban on D&D by the Waupun Correctional Institution. Captain Morawski, the institution's gang specialist, testified that D&D can foster an inmate's obsession with escaping from real life, correctional environment, fostering hostility, violence, and escape behavior. But public perception has changed. If people have any kind of negative view of role playing today, it's much more likely to be about the supposed geekish overtones rather than fears for the sanity of the players. The students who played D&D in the 1980s are now grown up into respectable careers. The view of role-playing games has changed over time, says Smith, mostly because they predicted streets awash with the blood of innocents as a horde of demonically possessed role-players laid waste to the country simply never materialized. Excuse me. And that's the end of our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Growing up, I remember my mom saying the same thing. I would, she, I'm pretty sure she said too, like World of Warcraft, like she thought it was the same as D&D, and she like, I don't know, it was like popular when I was in middle school, and she was like, no, like it's like satanic and da da da, like she didn't want to be playing it, so I never did. But it's just interesting, like the mindset, like how like one story, like one person, one group of people can just create like so much hysteria. I would maybe compare this to the Salem witch trials. Maybe this is like our modern day Salem witch trials. I mean, I know this happened in the 80s, but look at the impact it had over the years, like Utah, England, like Texas, all over the all over the world, like that went from the 80s even into like the 2000s. It's just crazy. Like the mindset and the mass hysteria and just everything. And people still today have that mindset with stuff. It's just crazy. And then like for people to like use it in like a political way, like as a weapon and like propaganda, and it's just crazy. I'm gonna post some links in the show notes when I do upload this. Some of the articles. Um, I found that interview. I think it was the one with Geraldo Rivera. I'm trying to remember, but I have some just fun stuff, some extras you can look into, do your own research. I'm still planning on watching that broadcast with Geraldo Rivera. And I definitely want to watch that documentary, Satan Wants You, just to see like how crazy like it was like in person city, like reading about it, actually seeing it like on the screen and seeing news reports and just stuff like that. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Ghosts, Demons, and Murder Oh My. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can get all the updates, information, and content that will be uploaded. Thank you for the support and for listening to my podcast. As always, I can be reached by email via haydencrook8@gmail.com. Thank you.